Hello and welcome to Something Borrowed 4 with me, Harry Baker, and my special guest, Gemma Barnett. We have got darker skies, but our hearts are brighter than ever. Enjoy.
Everyone all right? Fantastic. Welcome to Something Borrowed, performance-based podcast / live immersive experience. Where me and a special guest will take it in turns to share something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. We will have a bit of a chat in between that. And what I've learned is that rather than inviting the guest on just to sort of watch me perform before anyone's got to know them, I will share my something old first, and then I will bring our guest up so they can have all the rapturous applause and respect and adulation that they deserve. So you up for something old from me? Yeah! Fantastic. I wrote this poem around this time last year, which, as Neelan pointed out on last month's edition, that if a human had been around for a year, you wouldn't call them old. They would still count as new. But this poem, I'm working on a rewrite of it, so this is the old version. And I was asked to write it for a Advent reflection, and especially thinking about comfort and joy. And so I made a list of things that brought me joy at the end of 2022. Most of them I still stand by. Things that bring me joy. Deciding to make an Advent calendar of crisps for my friend. Deciding to make an Advent calendar of crisps for myself. Crisps. Stroopwafels, super noodles, leftovers for breakfast. How proud my teenage self would be of how often my adult self wears trackies. Spike ball. The idea that someone looked at volleyball and thought, well, this is missing is a trampoline. That sleeping, reading, and writing poems can never be a waste of time. Clearing my inbox, turning my phone off, being out of breath, crying, especially in films. Fireworks. How little I care if your dog doesn't like fireworks. Mainly because of how much I care about almost everything else. Robbie Williams' Christmas album, especially the song entitled Happy Birthday, Jesus Christ. Specifically the line where he describes the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 as, love that thing you did with the scampi. Self-Esteem's latest album, everything else self-esteem does. Finding out that Stormzy plays both Wordle and Nerdle and taking this to be further evidence that we could be really good friends. Watching the Lionesses win the Euros, the Football World Cup, every year except this one. Committing to screen Christmas films instead of the England games this year as a form of festive, peaceful protest. Musical bingo, Only Connect, Taskmaster, Ted Lasso, Yellow Wellies, a decent WhatsApp group, my nieces. How much my wife loves birdwatching. When anyone is enthusiastic about anything. That I'm on a mailing list for a company that makes reusable baking parchment. Simply because I bought a small amount 5 years ago. They email precisely once a year to see if I need any more, and I still don't because the original batch is just so reusable. That time I did a wee that lasted longer than a minute. The fact that I timed it. The fact that I've shared that with you. The fact that since sharing this poem, someone has messaged me on Instagram to say they did the same. Spending 3 hours playing a Star Wars-based board game with my neighbor the moment we both happened to have a day off. Margate. Writing a poem about my favorite sandwich from my local cafe in March. Getting paid for that poem in the form of 50 free sandwiches. 9 months later, that turning out to be a more reliable currency than the British pound. That $44 billion can't buy you happiness. That £2.90 can buy you an advanced train ticket from London to Bognor Regis. How hard it was to think of things when I started this list versus how hard it was to stop once I got going. The thought that at least some of you might go away and try the same. The fact that the start of this year was possibly the lowest I have ever felt, and yet here I am. Being prayed for, being held, being warm, being vulnerable, being open, opening a packet of crisps. Yeah. Thank you so much. Another thing that brings me joy is doing this, partly because I love sharing things with people. I love poetry. I love the open mic so much. But also it gets me a chance to bring down guests that I get to show off to you, and I get to show off Margate to them. And what I was going to say was this time felt exciting because it felt like one of the first guests I brought down who I didn't know really well beforehand. But after spending sort of 15 minutes chatting, I do feel like we're already best friends. So that has ruined that introduction. However, it has made me even more excited for what is to come. I got to know Gemma's work. I was sent a video of theirs by a friend of mine. And normally when friends send me videos of poetry, it makes me hate poetry. But Gemma is fantastic, and I was immediately enthralled. And since then, I followed their work, and then we were lucky enough to share a stage earlier in the year. And I'm so excited to be sharing this stage with you tonight. So please welcome to the stage the fantastic Gemma Barnett.
Hello, everyone. I thought I'd share with you the poem that I did when me and Harry shared the stage. It felt like a relevant old one. So this is called My Abortion Was Funny. Yes, I cried, but I don't want to talk about that part. I don't want to talk about the days I was made to sit with it in me. How whiskey didn't sit comfortably anymore. How raw kids made me feel on the street. Would avoid their gaze like I had a shoplifted toothpaste from Boots in my bag, bragged about my tits looking great, hating I'd lost control of my body. How silently I cried on a bus, and not just because the screams of a newborn sliced through torn skin, but because the women grinned at the young mum. One shared we've been there, and I felt like I had a secret so deep it would eat me. From the inside, spit me out so I couldn't hide. You made your bed. Lie in it. How I worked out the birthday, now it won't go away. How I'd hoped that he would stay. Lay next to me at least. I want to talk about how I shouted, I'm having twins, to make the sin as dramatic as possible. Friends who bought me products from Lush said I should get knocked up more. Their new shampoo was to die for. How I got my nails done bright orange before. So I'd be sure to look down at my hands lovingly, knowing they had touched good. How we curled up on the couch as I cramped, kicked, took codeine generously. Shall we just get high, make a day of it? Jokes about black veils, holding a funeral, sat laughing in the dark all afternoon. I couldn't bear sunlight in the room. Time wouldn't stand still, even if I willed it to, just for a few hours. How we said bye-bye bitches as I bled. How they fed me dinner, listened as I said it was the day after my period, I don't know how, stop me, don't do that. We don't care when, if, how, shame, it's not welcome here now at the table. I don't want to talk about how my phone suddenly only shows baby scans on Instagram, how I didn't have the energy for the Uber driver as he told me of the pounds deducted off his journeys because nausea really does hit at 6 weeks, how much I fucking hate this fucking country. With its new non-elected MPs who show up on reality TV like they haven't got a job already, how when I was in recovery, reality TV decided to debate what I'd done. Self-congratulate the opportunity to have these important conversations. Love may be blind, but with that lot, you'd need them to shut the fuck up too. This country, let me choose my life by post. I want to talk about how 2 days after I'd done it, I walked home, legs stiff and slow as though there was death in them, and I looked up at the moon. And I know moons are overused in poems, but I did. I looked up at the moon, and it was full. And the edges sort of melted, spread as if I'd dipped it in tea, and it really took my breath away. And not just because I was walking up a steep hill. And I said, hello, moon. I choose to be up at this time with you. And not because someone needs me to be up at this time with you, but because I, alone, choose to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I was Really hoping you would do that one because I loved it so much. The stage that we shared was the Outspoken sort of poetry awards, and I loved it because they had different categories for poetry and film, and for the written word, and for poetry performance. And so we were both shortlisted. So my first question for you is, how does it feel that we were both robbed?
Yeah, cut deep.
Yeah.
But it connected us, so there you go.
Yeah,
there
exactly,
are wins.
Exactly. If either
We're
of us had-
winning.
Yeah, yeah. If you had won, I might have felt sort of too hurt to invite you here.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
we've both made it. But on that note, I guess the first thing I saw of yours was a film that was more than just sort of done to a phone. It felt like a considered poetry film, and you also act and you write. And so what is your favourite way to share your words, I guess, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think definitely through performance. I felt like the poetry world felt a little bit exclusive outside of performance for me. And I found going to nights and open mics, like I was just so in awe of people standing up and sharing something of themselves with a load of strangers. And I kind of started writing in lockdown as well, because I found that I lost all my acting work, all my performing work, and I needed creativity in order to stay connected to what felt like a huge part of my identity. And then I just really like performance poets. And I also think that like everything starts from oral, right? Like storytelling starts from oral, and I've got a poem that I've tried to write to be read specifically, but there's something about sharing with an audience without having to read that just moves me more than other stuff.
Definitely. And in terms of performing, I always felt like I was very bad at acting, but I could do my poems because I'd written them and I knew what I wanted them to be, and then realised that the performance of the poem affects how people hear it or how they digest it. And I always feel like you don't want to be manipulative in your performance, but you want to share your words in the way that hopefully they can connect the best.
Yeah.
How does it feel as someone who can also act well to be performing your words?
You don't know that,
compared
Harry.
with
You haven't seen me.
comparing other people's words. It's kicking off.
That's a really good question. I think that the words do so much for you, and rhythm does so much for you anyway. And I don't know. Repeat the question for me, because I'm going to have a really good answer.
Okay, and then we'll cut it here.
Yes.
So it's completely. I guess, how does it feel performing your words compared to performing someone else's words?
So much more scary. Yeah, so much more scary, and way more vulnerable for me, I think. It's so cliche, but when you're given a character, there's a mask and some sort of wall that feels protective. And when I started doing open mic nights, I found that I couldn't control my voice in the way that I can when I'm acting, and like I was really, really shaky. But I also find in the performing arts industries, you lack so much control, so you're often given shit parts that I found really frustrating. So it was so much more fulfilling a lot of the time, being able to say what I wanted to say. And I just feel like sometimes when you walk into a room, you say you're an actor, everyone goes, "Oh my God, you want something from me?" And if you walk into a room and you go, "I'm a writer," people are like, "Oh, cool, what do you write? Like, what are your ideas? What are your stories?" And so I was like, I'd so much rather get that response.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Come on. And we are so grateful for it. Are you up for me sharing something new?
Yes, please.
Fantastic. So I've got two newer poems, and this one was going to be my something blue that I did at the end because it feels a bit heavier. But then I realised that I didn't want to end on that note. So this is something new, and between now and the end, I will make up a reason why the other poem is something blue as well. So look forward to that. But I wrote this. This might be the fastest poem I've ever written. Normally my poems take me ages. But on Friday last week, I was performing at an event in Cardiff on the theme of remembrance, and a few things have been going around in my head. One was that someone had messaged me on Instagram saying that they knew that previously I talked a lot about Palestine, and they felt like at the moment I wasn't, and they asked me if that was because I was too afraid to, or because I've changed my mind. And it turns out that they just didn't know how to use Instagram Reels because they were a boomer. But it was still enough to get me thinking about what silence means to different people. And then it was the fact that there was the Palestinian march that was on the same day as Remembrance Day, and it was kind of pitched as the two were somehow at odds with each other by those in government. And I realised that this year I was able to connect with Remembrance Day more than ever before because I was thinking about people who are dying in war. And so it's possibly unfinished, but it's something. There's power in our silence, even just a minute long. But it's hard to stay silent in the face of so much wrong. Told myself it's too complicated for me to get involved. Yet I've seen that feeling doesn't seem to stop some right-wing trolls. Remember, you do not have to read the comments. You do not have to feed the comments. That there's a setting where others don't even have to see the comments. Remember that it isn't controversial to not want people to die. And hospitals and hostages are fair game for their strikes. When innocent civilians have got nowhere to hide, it feels far more controversial to decide to let it slide. Remember that someone's not a terrorist just because they have brown skin. That someone's not a hero just because they're on the side that wins. That Russia claimed Ukraine were terrorists to justify their bombs. But we've always demonized the ones we're taking the land from. Remember, if Palestinians being free counts as anti-Semitic, perhaps your idea of a Jewish state is rooted in oppression. Remember that a life is still alive even if it's not your side. 10,000 Palestinians have been killed, they haven't simply died. Presented as inevitable following a pattern, but I cannot forget the fact this did not have to happen. Remember that those who choose to interact or distract in bad faith are not entitled to the energy it takes you to engage. That if you want a conversation, maybe this could be the place. But if you just want confrontation, I've seen too much of that today. I remember walking in the West Bank, being welcomed into homes of those who lost their land but who refused to lose their hope. The marathon in Bethlehem, running 2 laps in full, because there does not exist 26 miles without walls. I remember witnessing the farmers separated from their trees, olive wood older than the Bible carved in nativity scenes, visiting those in refugee camps who have held onto their keys, for one day they hope they'll return, and one day they'll be free. I remember feeling the most powerless that I ever felt, wanting desperately to know what we can do to help, being told to come and visit so that we might go and tell, to make sure they're not forgotten, and remember to live well. Because there's power in our witness, that we may need so much more than that. But when I remember this, I hope that silence isn't all I had. Thank you. Part of the reason I also wanted to do that earlier is because it felt like we could have an interesting conversation about it, and I didn't want to just sort of tag it on at the end or pretend that it was separate to everything else that's going on. And so I just wanted to say thank you for being up, for talking about it, and know what the...
So I am a Jewish woman, and very proud Jewish woman. And very luckily, as I grew up, my dad was incredibly honest with me about what it was looking like in Israel for Palestinian citizens. And he has gone back and forth and seen how violent the occupation has become. And I feel really grateful to have had his influence in my life. And he is incredibly active, and has been, and does a lot of that work, which, yeah, I think is incredibly important. And in your piece, something I've been thinking about so much is about silence. And there is a huge part of me that feels incredibly resentful that when I want to talk about my art, recently, I've been asked, what do you think about what's going on? And I'm like, and a lot of the people that are asking me it, I don't trust.
Yeah.
I don't trust them.
Yeah.
Whether that's right-wing newspapers wanting to ask me about anti-Semitism, which is rising, but I don't want them to be weaponizing it and using it against Palestine, which I see happen all the time. And so I'm constantly flicking between, I don't want to have to keep talking about this just because I'm Jewish. I've never been to Israel. Yeah. But right now, what I keep landing on is it is so important globally for people to see how many Jewish people are anti the occupation and anti what is happening right now. I mean, the marches I've been going to, and Jews are turning up in their tens of thousands, and it's incredible how much the movement has grown, because you can't hide from the truth of what is happening. And it doesn't matter if it's one innocent citizen who dies. Every human life matters, and that is in Jewish tradition. It's in the religion, and I can't bear that, like, something I love so much in my culture and community is being weaponized by certain people to justify the murder of a civilization.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I visited Israel and Palestine. It was my first year of uni, and it was a group of artists that went with this festival. And before I'd gone, I knew nothing about Israel and Palestine. So I was just immersed in it and had all of the kind of emotional response of a 19-year-old of like, this is right and this is wrong, and I need to tell everyone about it, and then that will solve the problem that no one else has solved before. But I remember one of the people we met was a Jewish woman who had been conscripted for the army and who had decided not to enlist, and talking about how that had affected her and her community, and kind of had this ask any questions even if you're not sure about them sort of thing. And again, in my naivety, I remember asking, if you want to speak up for Palestine, how do you not get accused of being anti-Semitic? And her answer was, don't be anti-Semitic.
Yeah, it's so easy.
But that's also important, because I think it is so easy to think of it. Maybe it's not easy, but it feels like lots of people think it as good versus bad. And so if you are saying bad things about the baddies, then that's somehow justified. And I think people lose that nuance. And I think, as you say, anti-Semitism is on the rise. And the idea that it's being weaponized, and the idea that it would ever be acceptable to justify treating anyone worse because of what you think they're doing or not is, it shouldn't be hard to get your head around, but it feels like it is.
Yeah, and I understand the fear of being scared of being called anti-Semitic, because there are a lot of right-wing politicians who do that, who go, oh, you said free Palestine, and therefore you are against Jewish safety. And that is just categorically not true. And there are so many movements now of Jewish people. Namod is an amazing one, which is a community of British Jews that seek to end the occupation, and they put out a statement about anti-Zionism, criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic. And I think it's so easy to not be anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Just don't equate what's happening to all Jewish people. Don't stand out synagogues doing it. It's really, really easy. And the marches have been incredible and vital, and I've loved going on them. But I have seen problematic signs.
Yeah.
And there's one I want to talk about, just because I think it's important to say, which was I saw we are not anti-Jew, we're anti-Israelis. And that, for me, is you can't be anti an entire nation of people, some of whom have been doing a lot of this interfaith activist work for years before it became something you could share on your Instagram.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel really sad, because we don't suddenly hate all Americans because Trump got into power.
Yeah.
And that's where I think some people get defensive.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just, if you see the growth of the Jewish community coming out to support Palestine now, it's very clear that it's not speaking for global Jewish safety. If anything, anti-Semitism is rising the more Israel become this violent fascist regime that we're seeing. And it's also backed up. Sorry, I could literally.
No. Thank you. Thank you.
It's also backed up by Britain and America, and the Holocaust gets brought up a lot. And there is such deep-rooted trauma in that. And Europe and Britain and America go, okay, we'll set up this state in the Middle East, which already has tensions, and that will be your safe place. It's like, Europe, you were the ones who exiled everyone, who massacred millions and millions of Jewish people, and now you're problem solving by putting them all somewhere else where there are already indigenous people, and then backing it up with military support. Like, it's just wild to me.
Thank you. You say you could talk about this. I want to talk about this forever, but I also want to hear some
poems.
So, are you up for sharing something new?
Yes. This is quite a diversion. This is a poem about pegging. Sure. So this is new because it's like me trying to do some prose. Cool. This is called Peg Puff. This was me sort of reflecting on a breakup that I'd had and the gender roles that were within that relationship. We are in a time of constant analysis. Yesterday, to avoid that, I booked a show about pegging. A wall of dildos lit up the stage. The play sought to disrupt our ideas of sexual roles, its characters needing to fuck how they were not able to live. This was communicated by multicoloured strap-ons and a bored speech on all the reasons the protagonist hated men. Some I shared. For 2 hours, I slid towards the edges of my own blackout. That night, I had booked a show I thought would be safe. Since that day separated on the sofa, I've found sadness to always be accompanied. Too up and down, you said, has found its way into my chest of drawers, making the simplest decision feel weighted. I perform for morning coffee, playing You Say You're Just Like Your Dad, whose doormat is listed with essentials just to leave the house. Quickly called out by a stranger in late October, he compared my teeth to a collage of features we're untruthful when clung to. When I looked up happiness, the example used she as its pronoun, her absence of it defining the word. Yes, I hid your skunk jar, and maybe you were right. You did need to find someone more traditional. A woman stands in a room, ceilings so high she can't see them. Next to her, a man with a voice fills the space, an open satin back, his fingernail moving up and down her spine skin, without a word. Later at home, you'll ask to be pegged. I'll reply, completely terrified about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My related question.
Oh, God.
You mentioned going to a show
Yes.
about pegging. Do you like to go and see shows? This feels like a weird question now. Do you like to go and see things that are completely different to what you write, or do you like to go and see things that inspire you, want to try and create similar things, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Everything, I think. I am slowly... Someone gave me really good advice as like an early theatre maker, which was develop your taste and the work will follow. So like the more stuff you see and the more you work out what you like, the more you'll slowly be able to start making that work.
Yeah.
And the first few things you'll do will be shit, even though you know if you know what your taste is, you know that you're on your journey there.
Yeah.
So I find, like, for example, I went to the theatre the other day to see Portia Gocklin at the Almeida. And like objectively, I think it's great writing, but it was so traumatic. It was like trauma on trauma on trauma. And I was like, I just don't understand the point of that theatre anymore. I don't know why we want to be so sad. I think this is like deeply reflecting on all of my work is like, I'm going to write about a really sad topic, but make it funny. But this was just like, it was incest, suicide, boom, boom, boom. And by the time I left, I was like, I need to watch some comedy or like scroll on my phone. And that for me just isn't the sort of work I want to make.
Yeah. When I started writing, looking back on it, I sounded like a combination of like the three poets that I'd seen and really liked. And then it was through seeing other stuff and being as inspired by seeing stuff that I didn't connect with and thinking, okay, that's not what I want to do, or that doesn't work for me, and seeing other people like it, all power to them.
And that being fine.
Yeah. And not thinking that I have ultimate taste.
Yeah.
But I think I more recently find myself inspired by going to see stand-up or by going to see music and bringing the things I love about that into my writing and into the poetry. And then every now and then I see a poet who just completely floors me, and I fall in love with that as an art form as much as with their work. And it kind of pushes you to want to know what's possible.
Yeah, totally.
So I concur. Yeah, for me, sharing something borrowed.
Yes, please.
So this was, I was asked to go on a podcast, and I listened to a previous episode to know what I was getting myself into. And the guest on that previous episode was a poet called Donna Ashworth, who I didn't know their work, but I fell in love with it. And so this poem is just called Joy Chose You. Joy does not arrive with a fanfare, on a red carpet strewn with the flowers of a perfect life. Joy sneaks in as you pour a cup of coffee, watching the sun hit your favorite tree just right. And you usher joy away, because you are not ready for it. Your house is not as it must be for such a distinguished guest. But joy cares nothing for your messy home, or your bank balance, or your waistline, you see. Joy is supposed to slither through the cracks of your imperfect life. That's how joy works. You cannot invite her. You can only be ready when she appears. And hug her with meaning, because in this very moment, joy chose you. My related question is, what is bringing you joy at the moment?
I'm doing a Jewish panto, which is giving me a lot of joy because I've never been in a rehearsal room where the focus is not on the acting, it's on how many puns you can get in a sentence. It's called Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Pig, because Jewish people don't eat pigs. So it's very, very, very silly. And that's giving me, being in a room of people playing klezmer music, which I love, and singing Barbara Streisand and Amy Winehouse with the most ridiculous rewritten lyrics, is bringing me a lot of joy at the minute.
The very idea of that brings me joy as well.
What's bringing
Thank
you joy?
I injured my leg a couple of months ago, and so haven't been able to run, and then realised that as it gets darker, just sitting inside all day is not good for my mental health.
Yeah.
And so yesterday I went for a very short run, but I ran far enough to then get out of breath, and that is something that was a physical sensation I hadn't felt for 2 months. And so that was really, and I felt that on a chemical level, I felt the endorphins of that, but also I'm very good at getting stuck in a moment and think, oh, okay, this is how I feel. This is how I'm going to feel forever. And so a reminder that I couldn't do that a little while back.
Yeah.
And in a little while further, I'll be able to do more of that. That made me happy.
It's fair. It's really annoying when people are like, exercise, but it does work. It really does work.
You just got to find a way that it works for you.
Yeah.
Are you up for sharing something borrowed?
Yes. I turned 30 recently and got this tattooed on me, so I was like, I should probably do it. Not all of it, just one line. That would be too expensive. But keep on snoring. This is on my phone. Bear with me. It's a poem by Richard Scott, and every time I read it, it just takes my breath away. I love his writing on love. It sort of breaks my heart at the same time as just makes me feel very alive. Anyway, this is called Love Version Of by Richard Scott. Tonight I watched you sleep, naked on the futon, face down, sweaty like a small child, and knew that everything else was bullshit. It's so hard to stay alive these days, or sane. So keep on snoring, Danny, while I guard you like a Rottweiler. Being in love with you is fucking awful. 'Cause one day you'll stop breathing. In this grey light, you already look dead. But then you smile, thank fuck. What are you dreaming about, baby? Wake up. Tell me if the word soul still means anything. Just love it.
Oh, so good. So good. I'm glad you told us which line you got tattooed.
My justification for it was that I'm a sleepy gal as well.
Yes.
I love a nap so bad.
I've recently tried to reframe the fact that I can't have lie-ins by the fact that I'm just really good at sleeping and that I just get enough of it done in a short amount of time. But it means that I often wake up in the night and my mind starts to go. So I think if I could look at a thing that said keep on snoring, that would be ideal.
Stay in bed.
Incredible. I've got one more poem if you're up for it. This is something blue, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. I studied maths at university, and I wrote a poem about prime numbers. And based on that poem about prime numbers, I was asked to write a commission, and it is my favourite commission that I've ever had, possibly my favourite thing that's ever happened to me, because it was a commission by a company in the Isle of Wight who were the first people to use postcodes on online addresses. Changed the game. And they, it's coming up to I can't remember the anniversary, which is bad because it's literally what I've written the poem for, but it's coming up to a certain anniversary of theirs. And this company are run by a Christian couple who say that they've been inspired to sort of use postcodes by sort of wanting to help people out down to their sort of Christian values. And so the specific commission I was given was, can you write us a poem that makes postcodes sexy? but that also reflects the glory of God. And I've never felt more able to thread a needle in my life. And it's blue because I blew them away. This is called an ode to postcodes. Some heroes wear capes. Some come dressed in lycra. Some swing on webs once they're bitten by spiders. Often the heroes are ones that we don't know. Here's an ode to the unsung hero, the postcode. First trialed in Norwich, they mustered up history, imparting knowledge with such specificity. No need for sonnets or colourful imagery, just alphanumeric, pure rugged efficiency. It starts with the area code. You might pop to Preston for the good PR, or choose to chuck Coventry on your CV. If you dwell in Darlington, keep it on the DL, or head to Huddersfield for life in HD. If you want to get online, take a trip to Ipswich. An IP address gives you all that you need. Or if you're in Belfast and you need to Belfast, I can guarantee your phone line comes from BT. The next digits give you the district. Like if central Newcastle is your fixed abode, you can always say yes to is NE1 home. Or catch me walking round Hayes in the days for sure, getting deja vu, I've seen you before. Or this happens all of the time. Does a German reluctant to solve workplace conflicts in Outer Herefordshire go and see HR? 9. Imagine if Frodo had known Mordor's postcode, the eagles could have dropped him off and then flown home. There's no place like home for Dorothy and Toto, but it could have helped shown where the yellow brick road goes. Oh, brother, where art thou would have ended quicker if that question's answered with letters and digits. Even the Titanic could have been less tragic with accurate geolocational planning. It's like we're all Disney princesses, white as snow. How up to 7 small characters can guide us home. They may not see through walls or have super speed. They just help you get to where you need to be. And all of this founded on strong Christian values. Enacted in everything that they do. As they've given to hundreds of organizations, there's power in people and postcodes too. Jesus cleanses the sins of whoever confesses. They cleanse your database of duplicate addresses. Jesus fed thousands and walked onto water. They validate thousands of emails, and that's also important. We know the Lord works in mysterious ways, and yet through him and through them, there's millions raised. Long may his work continue through AFD as he helps us all get to where we need to be. Some heroes can fly. Some are quick as a flash. Some become weirdly obsessive with bats. Often the heroes are ones that we don't know. This goes out to the unsung hero, the postcode.
You should write a panto because you are punny.
That would be my dream. An absolute dream. The poem itself was a joy, but also the back and forth about the poem, because as you might expect for a company that deals mainly in sort of postcodes, they're a stickler for detail. And so I sent that off, and I got a note back that said the iceberg that sunk the Titanic, it wouldn't have really helped if they'd known what a postcode was. So, and also, they have invited me to the Isle of Man to perform this poem at the end of the month. And I said to them, would you like me to do sort of like a bit of a longer set, and I could end on the poem as a sort of finale, as I'm coming so far? And they said, we've actually got quite a packed schedule, so if you could just just do the postcode poem, that'd be it. So
They're not interested in your personality, mate.
no, if it's not got postcodes, they don't want to know. What would your, if mine is postcodes reflecting the glory of God, what would your dream commission be?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me what my dream postcode was.
Oh, sure.
And I was going to say
too.
that I'm not going to give you my whole postcode, but the second half of my postcode is 0BS.
Oh, that's good.
Which I really like.
That's really good.
Yeah. What was the other favourite thing?
If you were asked to write a very niche commission, what would you like it to be about?
Desert Island Disc presenters.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
That's my goal in life, to get on Desert Island Disc. I mean,
Incredible.
it's everyone's goal, but
Yeah.
it's mine more. So.
I would love that. Incredible. Are you up for sharing something blue
Yes.
to finish off?
So I had a conversation with my dad, who's been diagnosed with bipolar in the last few years, about what hope meant to him. And it was a really interesting conversation where he essentially said that he finds hope isn't helpful because he constantly hopes that he's going to get better, and that sends him up, and then comes the down. And what he finds more useful is radical acceptance and navigating mental illness in that way. And so I wrote this about the experience of growing up in a house with that and our relationship. This is called I Broke Up with Hope in a House with Bipolar. I'm sorry, but I think it's over, Hope. I won't be roped into broken promises. In the days I've yearned for your return, I've learned to sneeze, just to fill the silence. Since you've been gone, I've had my phone on flight mode, willing an exploding load of I've been thinking of you, and all that comes through is an email headed, How to Self-Diagnose Tennis Elbow. See, I wrote a poem in his card 15 years ago. I know it's dark where you may be, but try and find the light in me. But there's nothing electromagnetic in a body. No radiation, gamma rays, microwaves, stuff you can place your hand in. You can't penetrate skin with softness. Look, I tried my best, but you've got to stop pushing for us, Hope. I've found someone else. There's talk of eloping. See, we want to get away because yesterday Molly May said we should all work harder. And the gynae told me, don't be stressed, it's bad for healing. Reels on Instagram reveal psychologists don't believe in meds. Co-star said that the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. And all I'd thought so far today is how well formed my morning dump was. And I'll be sick of opinions until we begin to talk about how ugly it gets. Until a pet smells depression in the dark, barks and humps a leg until we laugh. See, this isn't about you, Hope, now. I'm in love with clowning. How the other day I went round to his house and we watched the Lionesses play. At 7-0 I screamed at the screen, where is your enthusiasm, Dad? It's been gone a long time, Gem. And I let him say it. And I let myself feel it. And together we sit. Plus, you can't expect me to give a shit. I'm Glaswegian, and they're women, and we laugh. And we laugh. And we continue to live. Go now, Hope. Fine. I guess I'll be here forever, hoping things get better.
Come on. Thank you so much for everything, for your poems, for your warmth, for your generosity. That is basically it. Can we give it up one more time for fantastic Gemma Barnett?
Thank you.